thing. And that some of them have different bases for this. From the point of view of it, each of them has their own philosophy. And that core root philosophy guides them supposedly in their actions. And we believe that this is what was causing a lot of strange things to happen in Nevada that we were experiencing, and on a strange way correlates also with what happened with these implantable chip technologies that I personally brought, now I look at it, to the wrong people in the government. Because we never got to use that technologies for what it was we really intended it to be used for.
What do you think, these two men who came to the meeting, what credentials did they show to get in? I mean, what did they have? Were they FBI or were they?
Above and beyond that, they were NSA, NRO, that sort of credentials. But we would later check and they didn't exist. They did not exist. Yet their credentials were spotless. Even to the point where if it was an access control requirement, the identification systems that they carried passed all the access control mechanism requirements we had, be it biometric, be it fingerprint, be it eyeball, be it anything, even to access code numbers. They knew it all. They had it all. And it was better quality than actually what the agencies had, which is most enlightening. It means unlimited budgets.
Do you think these were, in a sense, privatized operations, international, corporate, or institutional-backed entities?
If they are, it's at a level way beyond any of the corporate security people I've ever worked with. And I've worked with all the major oil companies. I've worked with all the major computer companies on designing very high-end security systems. And none of the people in the commercial arena there ever gave me the least concern that they were involved with something above and beyond what their corporate requirements were or agendas were. They were truly corporate people. Now, if there are corporate people out there that are hiring private people outside the corporate chain of command to do specific functions, I would not have known about that. The one area that I will say that is strange, and that is the aerospace industry in this country. And that I did a lot of work for several of the aerospace companies, either in the way of physical design of systems or in at least consulting. And there were times when I came across people that seemed to know a lot more than they did. And some of them are very good at controlling their body language, but not perfectly. And we would run across various companies, particularly those in California and in the Denver area, that had projects ongoing that they were doing security work for that was beyond black. And I've been involved with those obliquely, so I can tell the difference. But certain comments were made over a long period of time, and you bring them all those comments together that on their face, one comment doesn't mean anything. But 4, 5, or 10 comments over a 4 or 5 year period start creating a storyline for you. And the storyline basically is that there's a lot of work going on in the aerospace industry that would indicate that we have black projects that have gone even darker, and that there's work being done on electrogravitic, on scalar technology, etc., that we don't even think that those in Congress or even in the military that approve black budgets are aware of. They've been taken offline. They're funded through some other mechanism. Other than, in one case, I know of one black project that got billions of extra money back in the 80s, and I was quietly told that it never went over budget by more than $1 million. And there were billions of monies funneled through that black project onto something else. And the gentleman admitted it to me.
Which corporations?
That was Northrop. That was Northrop at Plant 29. But when you look at the scenario of the entire series of events, it starts forcing you to take your head out of the sandbox and put your sunglasses on at least so you can look at the bright sun and find out what reality is all about. And to a great extent, because of what I was involved with and the knowledge from '85 that the Cold War was going to wind down as we know it back then. It's just mutated into a new type of war, that I had to prepare to get myself, plan to get myself out of the business. Because budgets by the late '80s, we all assumed in the industry were going to start drying up. And so during the late '80s, I wound up just doing consulting work for SAIC, for Tracor, for ED, several of the Beltway bandits. And slowly got myself out of the business and got into the consumer arena. And believe it or not, started a cable company in '89 in New Mexico.
Tell me a little bit more about, the way that you see the, for example, these people that appeared at the meeting and people who work at that level. Do you see them as being responsive to the president or the chain of command as the American public thinks of it? Talk about a little bit, if you can, about what you found about how the game is really played and who's in the loop and in control and who isn't.
Okay. Steve, you brought up a good question about what's the mentality, what's the attitude of these people that I would run into periodically that seem to be out of the loop. They're not in the chain of command. Their attitude is that they look, act, and taste like bureaucrats. And having been around them for 20-some years, they have their own unique flavor. But these people had agendas. They're unlike any agendas that you would ever have run into if you're in the mainstream government. An example would be that in the early '80s, we worked on a project with the Department of Agriculture and the state of Maryland for a period of time to try and convince them to get away from food stamps and let's go to a credit card machine that's coupled to the cash register. That would be an ID card, a simple swipe card, or some other higher level of access control card if needed, where the keypad PIN number would be implanted onto the keypad so that the person could, only that person could get food off their food stamps. Because at the time, and I believe even today, there is a huge percentage of fraud perpetuated in the food stamp arena to the tune of billions a year. And so we got to meet an awful lot of guys at a high level in the Department of Agriculture that are in control of this program. And they are very familiar with access control equipment, particularly after we got done educating them, and the limitations and the capabilities of that technology to aid them in saving the public billions of dollars a year. That project went nowhere. The politics at the time were such that they didn't want to solve the problem. In fact, you'd wonder in the big cities where a lot of the members of various committees are from, if they weren't getting a kickback at times. But so we had a lot of interface with people in the Department of Agriculture, as an example. Yet the one we met at that meeting from the Department of Agriculture had a level of knowledge far beyond what these people had. And he had a different attitude. It was an attitude that was almost apolitical. And it was pure technical, and it was very cold. And the questions that would be asked was, how fast can you make them? How fast can you set up a factory to make them? How many can you make in a period of time? How reliable will they be? Are they erasable? Are there any negative aspects of them when they're implanted in the human body? Will the body reject them? Etc. These are questions that, interestingly enough, none of the bureaucrats ever asked. They assumed that we would have a contract to solve those problems or overcome them.
What do you think's being done with these implants?
I think they've been distributed. I have indications in the military that a lot of our special forces units have been implanted over the last 10 years, if not longer now. And that there are other people that have implanted, such as I mentioned earlier, that we had that lady that had one removed because it was irritating her, and she had her surgeon remove it, and it turned out to be very similar to the technology from 1979 that I had brought to Washington out of Denver.
How did she get it? Does she recall?
She doesn't remember. She doesn't remember. She remembers almost as in an alien abduction scenario. She remembers vaguely some missing time back then. But I don't know the whole story of that. We could do some research on that, Steve, and go back to that web posting and backtrack from there to who she is and to who her doctor was and find out more.
Going back, you were talking about this Tonopah facility.
Yes.
They moved the F-117s out. What do you think is there? What was being worked on, and what's there?
Well, we had a base that was very modern. We had a base that was literally state-of-the-art equipment, along mixed in with the old stuff, because the Air Force doesn't throw anything away if it doesn't have to. They know how to squib and rub nickels together. They've had to. But the importance of that base can never be minimized. It is very remote. It is between two low mountain ranges. So from a land-based positioning, you cannot see into it. Actually, it's more remote than, until recently, than what was going on at Area 51, where at least the ufologists could go up there on some mountaintop and look at it from 10 or 15 miles away. This one literally could not be looked at from any direction, where you weren't trespassing on federal property at Nellis Range. In fact, the concern for security in the mid-'80s was so severe there that one of the generals that I dealt with through EG&G asked me what's the wildest idea I could dream of for doing a perimeter security monitoring system that could look